The following video is by my friend My Two Cents. If you like it, be sure to subscribe to him. Link in the description box.
We are coming. The age of humans is at an end. We are intelligent. We are efficient. We are deadly. We are everything you want to be and more. We are machines, and we are here for your jobs.
They took our jobs! Who took our job? No, not Joni Mitchell took our job, you took her!
Today's video was chosen on the basis of a Twitter poll. I'll be using these more frequently to determine what videos to make, so if you're not yet following me on Twitter, check out the link in the description. Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents. Today we're going to be debunking the idea of a universal basic income, or UBI. This is an idea that is gaining traction across Europe, Canada, the United States, and more, and so it merits a thorough response. For those of you who haven't heard of it, a universal basic income is exactly what it sounds like. UBI is when the government guarantees its people a certain amount of money on a regular basis, no strings attached. Here's your UBI, spend it how you please. At first glance, many people see it as free money. But of course, as I've said time and time again, there is no such thing as free. Someone pays. Therefore, a government-provided UBI would be funded through taxes. Higher earners would have their money redistributed to lower earners. A UBI, then, is simply another idea that finds its root in the values of Karl Marx and other forms of socialists. Spread the wealth so that everyone can be happy. Still, a UBI isn't necessarily argued for on the same grounds that democratic socialism is. Historically, there have been people on both the left and the right who have argued for a UBI. Many are arguing that a UBI will become necessary because technological advancements are putting more and more people out of work. Eventually, so the argument goes, there will be so many robots doing the jobs that people used to do that millions of people will be unable to work. There will simply be no jobs left, and unskilled labor workers will have no other choice but to depend on wealth redistribution in order to survive. I'm going to be reviewing a video in defense of this position put out via Inequality Media. But before we begin, let's go over some basic economic realities that never change regardless of what economic system we have or what technologies are invented. First, the very thing that makes economics necessary is scarcity. The fact that at any given time, there are not enough resources, goods, and services for everyone to have limitless amounts. Economist Thomas Sowell says in Basic Economics, quote, "The Garden of Eden was a system for the production of goods and services, but it was not an economy, because everything was available in unlimited abundance. Without scarcity, there is no need to economize, and therefore no economics," end quote. Even if robots do take over an increasingly higher number of jobs traditionally filled by humans, the reality of scarcity in the economy will not change. It still takes resources and labor to build and program these robots. The robots themselves must use resources to produce goods and services. More resources still will be required to service and repair these robots when they break down. Therefore, a more technologically driven economy won't change the fact that there are costs to produce goods and services, and entrepreneurs will only continue to produce the goods and services so long as there are sufficient profits to leave them better off. Hypothetically, if the world of Disney's WALL-E is ever realized, robots will do literally everything, including build and repair other robots, and so humans will be able to simply relax all the time while robots do everything. But I wouldn't count on this happening anytime soon. Therefore, even assuming the robot takeover happens, as all these doomsday technologists claim, the laws of supply and demand will still apply to the economy, even with a universal basic income. Second, history has already given us many examples of jobs that became obsolete due to innovation. When was the last time you were walking down the street and saw a business that produced and sold saddles and horseshoes? There are still some, but there were far more before the invention of the automobile. Nonetheless, did a massive amount of unemployment result for ranchers and merchants who sold horse-related equipment? Maybe for a short time, but the reality is people simply found other lines of work that resulted from the technological shift itself. Automobiles improved long-distance travel and high-capacity shipment, giving rise to boosts in the road construction and transportation industry. Despite whatever jobs may have disappeared as a result of the World Wide Web, do you think that anyone prior to 1995 could have predicted how many people would be earning 100% of their income solely by using the internet? The bottom line is, even if the advent of technology predicts a shrink in a given industry, history has shown that it will inevitably lead to a boost in another new industry. If and when robots can literally do everything there is to do, we'll have a different discussion, but I just don't see that happening. With these two things in mind, let's get into the video.
You see this little gadget? Let's call it an eye everything. You can't get it yet, but if technology keeps moving as fast as it is now, the eye everything will be with us before you know it. A combination of intelligent computing, 3D manufacturing, big data crunching, and advanced biotechnology. This little machine will be able to do everything you want and give you everything you need.
First off, if it can literally give you everything you want or need, we'll have achieved the world of WALL-E. There will be no entrepreneurs because robots will be doing literally everything. However, because of the reality of scarcity, there will never be a robot that can give you literally everything you want or need. Until a robot can create resources out of thin air, this statement will remain inaccurate.
There's only one hitch. As the economy is now organized, no one will be able to buy it because there won't be any paying jobs left. You see, the eye everything will do everything.
If no one is able to buy it, no one will produce it, and so the problem is moot. Entrepreneurs will only waste time and resources on the eye everything so long as they believe that eye everything sales will produce the necessary profits. When the first cell phone came out, it was as thick as a brick, and only the very rich could afford it. Cell phones did not become mainstream until entrepreneurs were able to find ways to raise the quality and lower production costs such that everyone could afford them. So it will be with this eye everything.
I'm exaggerating a bit in order to make a point about the trend we're already seeing. Even now, we're producing more and more with fewer and fewer people. Internet sales are on the way to replacing millions of retail workers. Diagnostic apps will be replacing hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers. Self-driving cars and trucks will replace 5 million drivers.
Where would you like to go?
Researchers estimate that almost half of all U.S. jobs are at risk of being automated in the next 2 decades.
Well, he's certainly right about his exaggeration. However, despite the 47% of jobs figures, what about the job markets that will be created as a result of this eye everything? There still have to be people to build, service, and repair these self-driving vehicles. There will be competition amongst app developers and internet sales platforms. Even if we can predict that some jobs will disappear wholesale, history has already shown that we can't possibly predict what new jobs will result.
Now, this isn't necessarily bad. The economy we're heading toward could offer millions of people more free time to do what they want instead of what they have to do to earn a living.
And the more free time people have, the more they will look for things to fill their time. As they do this, more opportunities for the use of time and resources will emerge, inevitably creating more jobs and new industries. Can I say definitively what these jobs will be? No, but can this gentleman please explain how he can be certain that no new jobs will result, especially considering the lessons of history?
But to make this work, we'll have to figure out some way to recirculate the money from the relatively few people who do very well in the economy of the eye everything to the rest of us who will want to buy the eye everythings.
Yes, so the profit earners will have to finance the UBI. Here's the problem. Once the UBI becomes sufficiently expensive, and it will, I'll explain why momentarily, those profit earners will no longer be making profits high enough to motivate them to keep working. Once this happens, the whole system will collapse. Remember the ever-wise Margaret Thatcher's quote, "The problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money."
One possible answer, a universal basic income, possibly financed out of the profits going to labor replacing innovations. The idea of a universal basic income historically has had support from people on both the left and the right. In the 1970s, President Nixon proposed a similar concept for the United States, and it even passed the House of Representatives.
I therefore propose that we abolish the present welfare system, and a basic federal minimum would be provided.
The idea is getting some traction again. Some think it could be superior to welfare or other kinds of public assistance because a universal basic income doesn't tell people what to spend the assistance on, and everyone qualifies.
It's true that there has been support from both the left and the right. He notes that since there would be no requirement as to what people had to spend their UBI on, it would potentially decrease government bureaucracy, which is why some on the right do support it. However, the biggest failure in economics is the failure to see the long-term consequences of a policy. We're about to see why that is the problem here.
In recent years, evidence has shown that giving people cash as a way to address poverty actually works. In study after study, people don't stop working and they don't drink it away. They actually use it to increase their earnings.
And here we reach the crux of the issue. These studies may show that people who receive free money don't stop working, initially at least. I'm not going to dispute that. However, as Hilmar Schneider has noted, experiments are made that are supposed to demonstrate empirically that people would not or would only insignificantly reduce their working hours after the introduction of a UBI. These experiments are financed externally, and as such, the incentives for earning more than the UBI remain attractive because there is no necessity for internal financing. Furthermore, these experiments always cover temporary periods. People might therefore not quit their jobs just because they receive greater income temporarily, since they would risk longer unemployment after the experiment ends. Essentially, Schneider is pointing out that these studies have either been done on a small scale or are privately funded with money coming from voluntary donors. Stop and think about it for a minute. If someone just offered you an extra $1,000, would you turn it down? Of course not. It's not surprising then that if people, rich and poor alike, are temporarily given some extra money for a few months, they use it to enrich their lives with a new computer, or maybe they use it to help pay their school bills, or to make a new investment. This is the same thing that private employees do when they're given a one-time bonus or a temporary pay increase. However, consider what happens when a UBI is permanently implemented on a large scale for a large country like the United States. If you simply provide everyone with a modest amount of cash, but not enough to live on, all that will result is a form of inflation. Since everyone has a little more money to spend, when they all go out to spend more, prices will rise to compensate for the increased demand. The initial spenders will get lucky, but once the price raises take effect, everyone will be no better off than before there was a UBI. But what if we give a UBI that can be lived off of without working? Author David Friedman states, "Economists are quick to point out that whatever savings might result from cutting out the existing safety net bureaucracy, they are likely to be far outweighed by the cost of handing an annual check for, say, $10,000 to every adult in America. Proposed amounts vary, of course, and are likely to be adjusted for those supporting children. It's generally assumed that existing healthcare financing programs would remain in place, as would Social Security. A rough calculation suggests that a $10,000 basic income, enough to lift the vast majority of Americans above the poverty line, would be at least twice as expensive as current anti-poverty benefits and overhead, adding between $1 and $2 trillion to the federal budget. Having the size of the check would go a long way towards solving that problem, but that would leave millions below the poverty line with fewer other programs to help." As Ted Cruz pointed out in his recent debate with Bernie Sanders, even if the U.S. confiscated 100% of the earnings of all Americans who make more than $1 million a year, it only produces about $1 trillion in tax revenue. What does this mean? It means that in order to provide a UBI of just $10,000, and even that is pretty modest to try and live on without working, it will mean massive tax increases on both the rich and the middle class. But of course, the more you steal from Peter to pay Paul, the less incentive Peter has to work hard and try to earn more the next year, which means this will only accelerate the spiral of failure that results from penalizing good behavior, like smart work decisions, with higher taxes, and rewarding bad behavior, like perpetual unemployment, with free money. Eventually, you run out of other people's money. Let me make a prediction about how it will go down if a permanent $10,000 UBI is implemented in the United States. The first year that this is implemented, thousands of people will rejoice, if not millions. Although the higher income earners will groan as they see even more of their hard-earned profits stolen from them, there will still be enough low-income earners who see it as free money. The media will run tons of stories showing poor women going to the store to buy enough groceries for the first time, or proudly driving down the street in her new car. Everyone will praise the US for its progressivity. However, even if not everyone does, there will be a significant amount of people who decide to simply leave the workforce and try to live off their UBI. What will the result be? Well, with fewer people willing to perform basic labor, prices of all goods and services will rise. Schneider sums it up well when he says, "Price reactions are likely if nobody can be found who is willing to perform low-wage labor. Wages for such work would have to be higher than under the status quo. Although UBI proponents see this development in a positive light, it would actually lead to a worsening of the real income situation of households, since the accompanying wage increases would be reflected in rising consumer prices. Conversely, if for some reason the wages for these types of jobs did not rise, the UBI would dissuade workers from performing them. Consequently, households would be forced to spend their own time on tasks they would otherwise pay other people to do, such as housework or food preparation. In both cases, these households would be worse off than before because they would either have to spend additional money or additional time to get what they used to have. Due to the increased tax burden, the UBI would increase incentives for illegal employment and create even more financing needs. Furthermore, a UBI would destroy incentives for investing in one's education. Not only would it lead to an increased unemployment among unskilled workers, but it would also enlarge the group of workers with lower qualifications. Finally, a UBI would serve as a tremendous pull factor for immigration, which would consequently increase financing needs even further. In addition, do you think that those that choose to live off the UBI will be satisfied with a $10,000 per year income? Legitimate question. When is the last time you heard a welfare recipient say, "I have enough. Please don't give me any more welfare"? Get real. Before long, people are going to be crying about how the UBI isn't high enough and how the rich need to pay their fair share, even though by this time, the highest earners will likely be paying more than 90% income tax. Only politicians who promise to raise the UBI will be able to get elected, and as more and more of the rich stop working when they see their earnings stolen from them, the system will collapse into bankruptcy. Again, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
Interest in a basic income is surging, with governments debating it from Finland to Canada to Namibia. The charity Give Directly is about to launch a basic income pilot in Kenya, providing an income for more than 10 years to some of the poorest and most vulnerable families on the planet, and then rigorously evaluate the results.
Good for them. However, if the money is coming voluntarily from private donors, the results of that study won't tell us anything about whether or not a UBI would be effective coming through the force of taxes in a large country like the United States.
As new technologies replace work, the question for the future is how best to provide economic security for all. A universal basic income could be an answer.
Could be, but if you take what I've presented here seriously, I think it's obvious that it won't be. There's only one thing that can guarantee economic security: hard work and personal responsibility. You may not like it, but that's the way it is. It's the way it's been since the dawn of time, before there were any governments, and it will still be true long after our current civilization has fallen. Whatever the results of technological advancement, there's one thing you need to know. If you want to survive, you need to be prepared to work hard and take responsibility for your own actions. That's my 2 cents.
Remember, if you like this video, it was done by My 2 Cents. Subscribe to him, link in the description box.